You've seen enough real ones that a fake kind of stands out to you.
That's right.
Today on Real Science Radio, we are excited to be joined by David Lines from the Creation Evidence Museum of Texas. David is here to talk about the fascinating Alvis Delk track, a human footprint fossil found alongside a dinosaur track in the Paluxy River region. This remarkable find has stirred both intrigue and controversy within the scientific and creationist communities. David, it's great to have you on Real Science Radio.
Thanks.
All right, so David, I want to jump right into this Alvis Delk track. You've got some stuff to show us, to share with our audience, and we're looking forward to it. So can you get us going?
To begin with, I'll say that the Bible teaches skepticism. One of the verses supporting that goes something like, test everything and hold on to the good. So jumping into this, I got involved with the Creation Evidence Museum in the very early 90s, and it was sort of started as a skeptical investigation. And so I decided, okay, if I take really good, high quality pictures of everything, if I offer to do that and produce a really good report, if this thing is a fake, they're not going to want me anywhere near this. But they threw the doors wide open and let me investigate the iron hammer artifact that they had. Now, fast forward to 2008, they called me and said they had a new artifact. And so I looked at it and I went, oh boy, that's just all arranged way too conveniently. That has got to be a fake. I didn't tell anybody this, but I was just afraid that maybe they were being suckered in. There were several things about it that made me doubt it. And so I set about, my thought process was, okay, if this is a fake, I should find certain things. And how would I go about making something like this?
And this is the Delk print, right?
This is the actual print.
So that looks like a baby human footprint with a dinosaur. I'm trying to make heads and tails of this.
That's about a size 11.
Oh,
It's smaller than my foot.
Okay, that's about a little bit smaller than my foot too. Yeah. You're talking about the dinosaurs 11 dinosaurs the size 11.
I don't know what this dinosaur. I've forgotten the measurements now. I should have had that available, but it was just.
You wear a size 20 shoe.
The first thing that I wanted to investigate with this thing was I wanted to see if the tiny little fossils were in the rock, and I wanted to see the texture of the rock. I wanted to see if it had been altered. We had someone bring us a footprint, and it had a very glassy surface, and you could almost see down into the rock and see all the tiny little fossils in it, but it was like it had obviously been altered. And so we told the guys, sorry, this may or may not be human, but we can't. The Dr. Ba asked him some questions, and they had actually, not knowing what they were doing, cleaned it with muriatic acid.
Oh.
That stripped off a lot of the surface material, and it just kind of made it useless as far as a scientific investigation.
Okay.
All right. So note to all you kids out there, if you find a fossil, don't clean it.
Correct.
Bring it straight to the Creation Evidence Museum in Texas. Have them look at the raw material.
Alvis Delk found this, and he cleaned it, but the way he cleaned it was he squirted it with a hose to get the infill out and the mud, caked mud off of it. And that's when only then, it sat out behind his garage for 8 years, and only then was he able to see the human print.
Wow. Now, what are we looking at here?
There's an inset, and up here is a if you look in the very center of the circle, there's a little fossil of some sort. It looks like a tiny, tiny bone. And I mean really tiny. This thing's probably not an eighth of an inch, between an eighth and a quarter of an inch long. Down in the lower part, if you look really closely, you can see some tiny shells.
Okay.
And so that kind of verified, okay, this is the real thing. This is what you find in the Paluxy limestone layers. And it doesn't look like it's been hammered. You don't see any little craters that a chisel would have done. So I thought, okay, well, maybe this is okay. This kind of passed
Your initial sniff test on it.
yeah. So right,
Okay.
this is when it was found. Like I said earlier, Alvis Delk had a lot of experience in archaeology and was pretty well known. He has since donated his collection to a museum in Granbury, Texas. If you're ever in Granbury, you can look up some of the museums there and see a lot of the 19th century and before artifacts that he's discovered.
Oh, okay. You know, when I was researching to do the show, one thing I noticed was almost every link that mentions Alvis Delk calls him an amateur archaeologist, which that sounds like it's true, but it sounds a little bit misleading. I was under the impression that he just stumbled across this and it was his first rodeo, but apparently it wasn't.
No, archaeology is like creation science or paleontology. You almost have to have a side hustle, full-time job in order to be able to participate in it. So he was, that was his passion, and he did other things to make a living, but he, his main love was archaeology, so he got pretty good and fairly accomplished.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. There's not a lot of grants being written for creation-oriented archaeology, I'm sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, he was also take us to the discovery site. We got permission to go on private land and check this place out. He said that he found the print in a pile of slabs up on the bank out of the White Bluff Creek. And this is, the discovery site is right at the junction of the creek and the river. And so, okay, so now next question. Why would a pile of slabs be up on the bank without a backhoe?
That's what I was just thinking.
So here's the site. The creek flows from this direction, flows through this channel, and joins the Paluxy River. The pile of slabs was actually, it was better than just up on the bank. It was up in the mud where all these people are digging up under the trees where it's not quite so hot. We dug out a few more very large, heavy slabs. One of them was like 300 pounds, and the water force had just tossed it up there. One other thing we found was that someone found a piece of iron. Well, Alvis Delk scampered over there, and so they all dug it out, and it turned out to be a 19th century wagon axle. That had gotten washed down the creek and thrown up onto the bank.
Wow.
And so that, of course, went to the landowner as a very interesting artifact. But it was just interesting.
Yeah. And so this Delk print, you guys are in possession of it, right? So at some point in the past, you must have purchased this from Alvis Delk, or what? How'd you guys end up with it?
The museum purchased it from Alvis Delk.
Okay.
And then we went on with further investigation. This is White Bluff Creek here, and it runs under this bridge. That bridge is very significant, and we'll come back to that. It makes this curve, and you see some houses, and then you see green trees, and then you see the creek. Those houses are actually 25 or 30 feet higher than the creek. And so this is sort of a bluff, and the trees were covering up the actual discovery site. And then it goes on down through here and then joins the Paluxy River. This creek comes down from a much higher elevation. There are a lot of hills around here, and this creek can get, the Paluxy River can get really mean. It's one of the steepest rivers in Texas. It's used by kayakers a lot for whitewater practice. If you see these lines on the topographic map, that indicates that you've got a really steep incline. So all this water rushes down into the river, and it tends to, you get this wall of water effect because it rains up in the hills. The drainage comes down to central points. They combine and combine and combine, and they finally get into one creek. The creeks get into the river, and you really do get a wall of water effect. And people have died in the state parks from this, just such walls of water. This is what the water can do when it suddenly comes up over an incline and rushes down a slope. This particular picture is Lake Grapevine. You see people up here. There used to be a road right there. You used to see people over there. The bedrock was no match for that rushing water. Water weighs 60 pounds per cubic foot. If you look at over in the left column, you see that the Paluxy River was capable of getting 60,000 cubic feet per second. If you do the math, that's 3.6 million pounds of water every second flowing by that gauge.
Wow.
If you had a sledgehammer that weighed 3.6 million pounds and you were able to swing it once every second, you could pulverize just about anything. An interesting thing, if you look, over the years, these peaks tended to go away. Is that because they didn't have any more floods? No, it was. They still had normal rainfall. But the Corps of Engineers, back when the government spent money on good things, built stilling basins. They built these little lakes high up in the hills. Then that violent water could collect in there, calm down a little bit, and then proceed at a little bit more leisurely rate down the creek. Still wasn't slow by any means. Then it got to this bridge. The bridge is actually up here. This is one of the bridges where they have to build concrete slopes on either side to keep it from being washed out. Now, another thing those concrete slabs do is create sort of a fire nozzle effect. It focuses the water. It rushed out at very high velocity, hit this ledge in the river, and just dug it up. And it blasted big chunks of rock. At the bottom of the picture, you see some of the large rocks that we dug out. It's still full of them. So, okay, that satisfied one of my objections is why are people bringing footprints to us that are just loose slabs? That's, did they take them out of the riverbed, or did they take them off of private land, or where did they come from? And so this one was blasted up out of the creek, but at least now we have a plausible mechanism for lifting such a heavy rock out and throwing it up into the mud bank.
Yep. And you see them there now. I mean, there's slabs now that are up there. It's not like
Correct.
somebody went and planted them there.
So this is the hole that it's been digging. It's almost like it's got a cave in there.
Yeah.
So that might be an interesting scuba project if we could ever arrange to get somebody back in there. This is one of the slabs that we took out. This is the largest one. It didn't have anything in it, so we got rid of it. It was in the way, I'm built into the wall of the building by now. Okay, what does mud do when you step on it? It squishes. And why does it squish? It gets displaced. Liquids don't compress. So when you step into mud, it goes down, and then it goes sideways, and then it comes up.
Yeah. Feels really good too. I love that feeling.
Now, when that happens, some parts of the mud get more porous, some get less porous, and so you've got a bunch of density variations. And it also slides. That's the reason we have so many footprints and so many weird shapes and lengths. I did a test. I've got a size 13 foot, but I went out into the front yard and I left footprints from 16 to 22 inches just because of the sliding. It also sticks to things. You tend to, at a certain point, you tend to get taller as you walk along in the mud because it sticks to you. When you are walking along, if you're trying to get somewhere, your heel hits first. This is a pressure diagram that they did to study how to make better shoes. Your heel exerts a lot of pressure because it lands. Then your foot rolls over to the outer edge, and then your little toe hits, and your rest of your toes, and then your big toe digs in to launch you on your next stride. I didn't think that was really, I thought that was weird, and I couldn't imagine it. And then I saw an Olympics slow motion where they decided to get artsy and and focus in on the feet of the runners. And they were doing exactly this. They hit on their heels, they rolled over to the outside, shifted to the inside, and pushed off with their toes.
Okay. It sounds like this is going to be another way that this rock, the authenticity of it is validated. I think that's where this is heading, right?
Well, maybe.
Okay. Okay.
I was present when in fact, I laid the slab on this gurney here, or this is actually a table in a CT scanner. The director at Harris Methodist Hospital had just gotten this new installation. He was an expert at radiology, had written widely about it, and I don't have his name. I apologize for that, but he had the new machine, didn't know what its capabilities were, so he was testing it to its limits. It's like you get a new car, how fast will this go? So a rock is not a good thing to put in the machine because you really have to crank the power. So they were very careful to get us out of the room before they unleashed the radiation. A CT scan is a bunch of x-rays in very thin slices. So what that does is it scans through a tiny thin slice and it shows you the density of what's in there. An x-ray does the same. A simple x-ray does the same thing. If you land wrong on your arm and they take you to the hospital and they do a preliminary simple x-ray, they can tell by the shadows if you have a crack in your bone. So what you're seeing here is the shadows and energy density. Now with the CT scan, it's better because you can see different places in it. It gets a lot more precise. So you see all of this disruption where the fluid mud has been disrupted. It has been pushed and shoved. So what we're looking at is we're looking the direction of the guy's foot. Here's his big toe. The dinosaur impression isn't there yet, but it's coming. The dinosaur's going toward the left, and so that shadow tends to extend further toward the left. They did some research on the sand layer, the compressed sand in White Sands, New Mexico. They found where a human had walked alongside the trail of a giant sloth, and they could tell which way they were going, even though the footprints were indistinct, simply because of the density. Here's the big toe impression. Here's where his big toe dug in. Here are his other toes. When it gets out here beyond where his toe actually was, you can still see the shadow here from the direction he was going. So you're going to have two shadows. You're going to have one somewhat going forward from the impact and one going backwards from where the creature was pushing off. you can't carve shadows into solid rock. This is one thing that's sort of swung my opinion.
Yeah.
I had
Okay.
also seen other footprints with the same characteristics.
So this isn't something you can fake. So this is really,
No,
yeah.
I had
Just
a
out of curiosity, what direction was the human running, and what direction? Because they probably didn't obviously happen at the same time, right? I mean, otherwise that dinosaur is about ready to step on that guy.
Well, Fred, I think there was several million years in between, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
the guy was running toward the top of the screen. The dinosaur was running toward the left.
Gotcha.
We showed this at the museum one time, and there was a preacher who had moved to the Dallas area to take a job as a pastor of a major church, and he thought it was fake. I said, "How would you fake this?" I went over this material with him. I said, "How would you fake this?" And he said, "Well, you just put something on it to soften up the rock, and then make an impression of a dinosaur, uh, mold that into it." And I said, "If you know how to do that, you should be a multi-billionaire, because you would have every highway repair contract on Earth."
Yeah, I was gonna say that it's easy to say soften up rock, but it's not so easy to do.
You know, everybody knows how to recycle rock is to grind it up, put it through a kiln, break down the water bond molecules, and turn it back into Portland cement.
So that brings a question to my mind. How do we know that this wasn't just made in clay and then like baked in a kiln and presented to everyone? And how do we know that?
The discovery site was one thing. We don't know it 100%, or at least I don't, because I still have a little bit of skepticism, and I haven't found a scripture in the Bible that says, look under this tree and you're going to find a rock with a human and a dinosaur footprint on it.
Oh, I got you. So if it was in the Bible, you would believe it.
Yeah, that would be the 100%.
There
And
you
even
go.
back to the original languages.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay, so since we don't have chapter and verse, we have to, and obviously none of us were there. I like the fact that you do keep a bit of skepticism. That's healthy, and it's another flavor of what did Bob used to say, Fred? It has the flavor of reality, or it has people say it has the ring of the truth.
Yep.
So moving along, we're looking inside the rock. We've got an ability to do that now without destroying an artifact. Here's a different view with slices going the other way. Now, you would wonder, okay, so if I carve one, what's it going to look like? Well, it looks different. And we'll get a little bit further into that later. There's a shadow under a carved one because of artifacts of the computer algorithm that puts the images together, but it's nothing like this. Now, this actually is a fake. There was a newspaper article. A reporter called me, and he got pretty nasty. And I sort of got nasty back because the guy he was not being logical, but he slandered Alvis Delk. He slandered the guy that was helping Alvis Delk. I think they probably could have successfully sued him. There was he stirred up a lot of controversy, but I won't get further into that. The worst thing he could say about me was that I was involved in running a Christian school. So that was a negative thing in his article to discredit me. So that tells you the flavor of the article right there.
That's what I was going to say. In journalism schools, that's considered a crime in some journalism schools.
So he supposedly had found the granddaughter of George Adams. George Adams was a kind of a legendary figure in the very early 20th century. He was brilliant. He was incredibly strong. He had gotten a law degree. He never lost a case when he took one. But he decided during the Depression, some people were carving dinosaur prints and selling them just to survive. He decided he would copy one of the prints in the river. So he did this, but he was so successful, he did a couple of them. One of them was embedded in concrete. It's now in somebody's patio in Glenrose here. And I've got another picture that I can show later. But this print was found by someone who'd gotten permission to go over his whole old home place when they sold the land and they were going to pave it over with a parking lot. So he was working with his metal detector, but he was probing around looking for metal and then found a big rock. He dug it out and it was this thing. This was the print that George Adams' granddaughter claimed that he had carved. And his granddaughter was convinced under questioning of the supposed journalist that the Delk print was actually the one that George Adams carved. This is the one he carved. Look at all these little pock marks. These are impact marks from his chisel. He did a very good job. He preserved the mud up push. He got that detail right. He really got the toes very good too. But it's just not quite right. The heel is a little bit weird. It's not totally out of the bounds of a real print. But all of these little carving marks is really what gives it away.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one we also had CT scanned. I don't have the scans, but there was a slight shadow underneath it, but nothing like the displacement that we saw on the other, what we think are genuine prints.
Okay.
It's a shame that these fakes are out there because I remember. You're talking. You were looking at this Delk print in the 2008 time frame, because I remember it seems to me either in the early 80s that claims were basically made that all these tracks were fake, and because there were some fakes, it was really easy for everyone to just dismiss them all as fake, and I was convinced they were fake when I was a little kid.
Right. Another thing that we did was we went out to the infamous Taylor Trail, which is a whole other hour-long topic. But I was looking at things in the river and thinking, well, I wonder if that's a human print. And then when we got the water pumped out and I actually saw a decent human print, it was like, oh, okay, there's no doubt what that is. And there are no little peck marks or anything else. It does not look carved at all. It had a little bit of erosion, and you could see the erosion effects all over the riverbed. But you can tell, and they are out there. They're in the rock layers. Much lower quality prints are touted as 100% human or hominid if it fits the evolutionary paradigm.
Ah.
So the ones that you saw, did you get pictures of those?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were in a trail. Some of them were more distinct. Some of them were less distinct, which it fits with reality. If you go out and look at the sand in areas where kids run around barefooted and play, you can find all sorts of weird prints, and you can't tell that some of them are even human, but you know that they are because they're in a trail and you see some very distinct prints. This is the fake print.
That you're showing now. Okay. Yep.
You can see all of the pock marks and everything. You can see the rough chisel marks around here, which if someone had taken the print out, that's a plausible thing. Now, what's not plausible, if somebody had taken the print out, is look how close that big toe is to the edge of the rock. If you had actually chopped a channel around that close, that detail would have crumbled. The reason I know this is because I've seen people take up dinosaur prints on their private land, and they have to go to great lengths to not let the thing break. So they have to take up a lot of rock around it to get an intact dinosaur print up.
And so you've seen enough real ones that a fake kind of stands out to you.
That's right.
I've heard that's how people who spot fake currency, that's how they train themselves, is they look at the real thing so that when they look at a fake, it almost immediately they know it's fake, and then they have to dive in to kind of figure out the details, but they just kind of know it's fake.
That's right. You really, there's another thing that I did. I wanted to see if I could make a fake. So I had my grandson make a mud donut on a big rock that I drove home. And the next thing I did was pour it full of acid. Now, this was great fun for a grandpa and his grandson. Big, stinky mess. And it bubbled, and we poured more acid in, and it finally died down a little bit. And that is really a nice mess. So we washed the mud off and this surprised us. We got this big orange spot that was left. That was as far as the acid got through the rock. And we put a lot of acid on it. So now if I want to look inside the rock, I can spend the money and drive the distance and go to a CT scanner, or I can use cheaper methods, like an 8-pound sledgehammer. So I whacked it right smack in the middle on the back. That split it up into these pieces. That chemical did not penetrate below the orange layer there. If I had been totally scientific, I would have let it dry out a little bit, but I was in a hurry. So the liquid tended to run a little bit, but it really didn't affect the porosity. It certainly didn't make any deep shadows in it. So that ruled out acid in my mind. Later on, a friend of mine named Ian Juby, I don't know if you've heard of him or not.
Yes.
Catch up with him sometime. But he and I used a drill and acid, and then he was able to get it CT scanned, and that was inconclusive. They didn't come up with any amazing shadows underneath the depression.
Okay, so what are we looking at here? What is this an image of?
That is the rock that we did the acid treatment on.
Okay.
And I hit it right in the middle on the back, and that split it into 4 pieces. That sort of tells you a little bit about the crystal structure of the rock. If you do this with a computer chip wafer, it will split into 4 even pieces at precise 90-degree angles. The rock's a little bit different, but it's a similar material. Still got a lot of silicon in it.
So I'm trying to understand what this shows here.
There was a lot of chemical activity right up here where this orange layer was. It created a thin crust of chemical byproducts that tended to shield the underlying rock from the acid.
Okay. And so how does this play into like faking a fossil or authentic fossils? I'm still not seeing a connection.
Authentic fossils are going to have mud displacement and porosity changes inside.
Okay.
Fakes don't go below the surface.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's the point, is we're seeing this kind of attempted a fake, and it's not going beneath the surface, and it's kind of more validating your previous slides on the shadows that you see with the CAT scans. Is that what we're seeing here? Is that the point?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
my goal here, besides to rule out being fooled by anything, just pure skepticism, was skepticism will actually protect the museum from displaying something fake.
Mhm.
I'll give you one point that is from a book that I might write sometime day. I've got a lot of notes, but the thing you want to believe is what you need to be most skeptical about, because that's your weak point.
Mhm.
That's why most people are going straight to hell with jet rockets, because they want to believe that that they're the master of their own lives and that they're some sort of god. Anyway, yeah, be very careful with that.
The center picture here is the known George Adams carving. It sort of is in the style of that other one that we know was a carving, but this one is also in the guy's patio in Glenrose here. The one on the right, the jury is out on this. There's not enough to completely call it a fake, and there's not enough to hang your hat on it as evidence for humans and dinosaurs together. There are too many little anomalies and so it may or may not be fake. The one on the left is actually a child's footprint in the mud near the Paluxy River.
Okay, and that's not a fake.
Correct. That's a real kid running through real mud, and we found it maybe a week after the area had been really gloppy and muddy, and it was in a trail.
Okay, so just overall, it looks like what you're saying is with all the analysis that you've done, which is quite a bit, the Delk print looks authentic to you.
Yes, I think it is.
Okay.
And I think if we could completely excavate that hillside, we might find more.
Yeah, that would be super cool. So I got to ask you, so you probably know Dr. John Morris, I think the late Dr. John Morris of ICR. He expressed skepticism about the Delk track. Uh, how would you respond to this? I'm curious how you guys have, because John Morris kind of threw a lot of cold water on this whole thing many years ago.
He should have thrown cold water on it, because I was throwing cold water on it in my own mind when I first saw it. It wasn't until I had a lot of hands on and stood there in that CT lab and took hundreds of pictures, very close up pictures, found all the little fossils in it, flipped it over, found an area that the dinosaur had actually compressed and it was more dense on the back. So it was, and still, I'm kind of growing toward thinking this is genuine. The one of the last things was I was wondering, okay, why did that break around the prints? And then later I was looking at the CT scans and going through this, and it looked to me like the rock was a little bit more dense on the perimeter because of all of the disruption that was going on in the middle of it. And so that would have tended to make a strong band around the piece to hold it together. And so when the rock did let go and fracture, it didn't go through the prints. It followed around the perimeter.
Yeah, that makes sense when you talk about density. It was squished together. It was a little firmer. Wow.
So with the evidence that you presented today, is this newer evidence that, maybe if ICR was to review it further, or is this still something that they and other creation organizations still reject? Or, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it sounds like to me that the evidence points toward this being authentic.
My opinion is that they need to spend more time and more money investigating it.
Well, hopefully we will have a chance to speak with someone from ICR. Fred, I know we have some contacts there. We've had some conversations before, and maybe this is something they could look at again.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, David, it'd be cool if, we just keep excavating. Chances are there's going to be more. I know it's hard work to find that stuff, but hopefully someday we'll uncover some more examples to look at. Well, David, that was really super interesting. Kind of catches up our audience on the whole Paluxy River footprints. We know there's been a lot of controversy on this over the years. And before we wrap things up, I can't let Doug get off the hook. We have to do our interesting fact of the week.
Oh no, I thought I made it out. Without okay, Fred. I'm ready.
Are you ready? This one might not be too bad, but we'll see, Doug. So here's the interesting fact of the week. What does the term fossil literally mean in Latin? And if you want, I can give you 4 to choose from. If you don't know right off the bat.
Fossil.
Yes.
Okay, well, I know that, this is called the temporal fossa in your forehead. Some people have a deep temporal fossa. Some people have a shallow temporal fossa.
And what it means in Latin.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess it means an impression.
Okay, well, I'll give you. That's okay. Well, let me give you 4 to choose from: ancient bone, dug up, buried treasure, or turned to stone.
So I really thought I nailed it with the whole fossa thing. Okay, turn to stone.
David, do you have an idea, or do you want to take a stab at it?
You're killing me, Fred. David, help.
I'll give you a clue. His namesake is currently a co-host on Real Science Radio. So here they are again: ancient bone, buried treasure, dug up, turned to stone.
Logically, I would think it would be dug up, but
there you go.
Well, there you go.
All right. Okay. Well, David, did you have anything else you wanted to add on the whole Paluxy River, I guess, controversy, and or anything more on the evidence museum in Texas, the Creation? What's your museum again called?
Creation Evidence Museum of Texas.
Yeah, and I know that place has become quite the place. I'd encourage people, if you're in Glen Rose, Texas, to check it out. I mean, I think last time we talked to Carl Baugh, this thing started out as like a house trailer, and now it's a nice building. You guys got a sophisticated lab. I know a lot of great research is going on there. So wonderful stuff you're doing down there. Now, do you actually work for the Creation Museum there?
No, I do. It's sort of like a contract type of thing. I spend a lot of time doing video editing, and I do the YouTube videos extracted from the director's lecture sessions that go on the first Saturday of each month.
Okay.
And then in keeping with my skeptical investigation, I try to get as many detailed pictures as I can to gather information that somebody later on down the line can look at and find something that everybody else missed.
Well, I think you've made a pretty strong case, at least in my eyes, that it would be hard to make a case that the Delk footprint is a fake. If it is a fake, it's an extremely elaborate one. So I guess it's possible that it is what you're saying.
And I just wanted to say, I asked, how do we know that this wasn't just made by someone impressed in mud, maybe in 1950 or 1930, but looking at the riverbed and then all the other stuff you showed, it just looks the same. It looks similar. It doesn't look like, anyway, it has that flavor of reality and that ring of truth.
One thing I'd like to see is someone develop a hobby of investigating all of the different mechanisms that people suggest for making a fake.
And like you said, if they were able to fake this particular print, they would be a billionaire.
I don't think we can make cement to the quality of the limestone that we find.
Yeah.
We would like to.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, is you can't make that kind of stone and then make it soft. And anyway, it would be very, very good case, David. Thank you for taking the time to bring this to our audience. And like I say, hopefully we will have an audience ourselves with some leaders in the creation science movement, and take another look at the Delk tracks and the Paluxy River in general. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, David. All right. So for David Lines and my co-host Doug McBurney, I'm Fred Williams of Real Science Radio. May God bless you.